Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. If I'm talking too slow, it's because my webcam has trouble keeping up with me. I'm actually doing this video for the second fucking time in a row. But anyway, A Princess of Mars. I decided to do A Princess of Mars because of this whole curiosity thing and Mars and things like that going on. But A Princess of Mars is a pulp fiction novel. Now, for those of you who don't know what the genre of pulp fiction is, because you haven't seen my Conan video yet, well, fuck. Edgar Rice Burroughs, the guy who wrote Tarzan of the Apes, he knew that this was going to be a very bad book in terms of writing. It wasn't going to be like Grapes of Wrath or anything like that. He actually knew that it was going to suck so bad. He knew it was going to be like smart, intelligent writing, because he actually, when he first published it, he actually wrote it under a pseudonym because he felt embarrassed that, you know, his colleagues or whatever might see it and be like, you wrote this shit. But anyway, it turned out that people loved it. People absolutely loved it, and he made an entire series of it. And you can find it, there's many names for his series: the John Carter series, the Barsoom series, the Martian Tales, the Martian Trilogy. But it all starts with A Princess of Mars. Now, A Princess of Mars has a lot of elements that, for example, you see in Star Wars and whatever else I can't think of right now, that whole saving the princess thing and things like that. That all came from A Princess of Mars. In the beginning, I kind of dropped it because I didn't appreciate the style of writing. See, it's written like a journal because it literally is the journal of John Carter and his first 10 years in Mars. And the funny thing is that Edgar Rice Burroughs actually puts himself as a character. Like, he pretends that he's related to John Carter, and he's like, oh, I found this mysterious document from John Carter, and blah, blah, blah. And, which is funny because that's what they did in the movie. And the movie you should see also, by the way. It was pretty underrated. I'm surprised at how bad it did at the box office. I guess, I don't know, people just don't appreciate things sometimes. But anyway, the whole story is pretty easy. This John Carter, he's a Virginian cavalryman from the Civil War. He goes to a cave because he's going to put some gold in it. But then he gets mysteriously transported to Mars, and through means by which I don't really know, nor does it really explicitly say. Maybe later in the books they say how it happens, but for now he just kind of zones out, and it's like, I'm on Mars. And he runs into these green Martian race, and then he meets a princess from this other human race, but they're not really humans. And then her tribe is warring with another tribe, so, and then he falls in love with her. So it's pretty, you know, it's pretty predictable. But at the time, you know, it was a breakthrough back in 1917, I think, and it inspired a lot of authors like Ray Bradbury for one, and also scientists like Carl Sagan, because this was really one of the first major sci-fi novels that talked about alien races and going to another planet and things like that, so people got excited. And I think reading it today, that's one of the things that could kind of ruin the experience, because, you know, we know a lot about space, and we know a lot about other planets around our system than we did, you know, a century ago. So, you know, you kind of have to like let that go for a little bit and just let your imagination run wild. Now, the funny thing is that the imagination in this book is pretty just out there, because I like to, like, when I read it, it was kind of like a little kid that just had an orgasm of imagination. It's like, oh, he goes to Mars, right? And then he meets these aliens that have like 5 limbs and things like that, and then they have like tusks, and then they have like their own language. But no, and then they also have like, they can like think thoughts to each other and things like that. so they don't really need the language, but then they do it anyway. And then there's like things with like many legs walking around, and then they're humans too, but not really because they lay eggs. And it's kind of, it doesn't really explain a lot of things. It's like the whole like the fact that there are other humans but they lay eggs. That's absolutely ridiculous, but whatever. But even in its scientific inaccuracies, there are some things that Edgar plays with that are actually really interesting, and there's like this whole solar power thing and the atmosphere factory that was very interesting. And even I read that in his later books he plays with even more themes like genetic engineering and organized religion, manipulating people and things like that. So it's still, you can see how much of a, even in its ludicrousy, how much of a breakthrough it was back then. The thing about the writing is that there's a lot of passive voice. Now, for those who don't know writing terminology, passive voice is basically saying, I was shot by John, instead of just saying, John shot me. Now, you might think, oh, what's the big deal with that? Well, it's not that direct. So your brain takes a split second to think about what just happened, instead of, when you read John shot me, it's like, oh, okay, it's a millisecond of understanding. Whereas in passive voice, especially if you continue the sentence on and on, it might not be clear to you what's going on or who's doing what. And, there's a lot of just, it sounded like Edgar Rice Burroughs was trying to be elaborate and profound, but then it just sort of just clunked together. It's just, there's a lot of like, oh, and therefore, and thus, therefore I, and such as, within this, there's like a lot of that, and it's just, it would have been nicer if he trimmed the sentences a little more. So there's that. Another thing is that since it's written like a journal, there's a lot of things that are just vague. For example, John Carter, when he wanders around the Martian landscape from time to time, he just runs into things, and it's like, oh, and then the next night, these beasts, these man-eaters attacked me, and it's like, okay. I have no idea what they look like, other than they can eat men, apparently. And then there's also, I think that's about it. I mean, it's entertaining. I actually, as I continued it, because I started it and then I forgot about it, and then I saw the movie, and I was like, hey, yeah, let's go back to it. And then I actually got excited about it. I actually, by the time I finished it, ends at a cliffhanger, by the way. And by the time I finished it, I was like, oh, let's head on to the next one, The Gods of Mars. And I actually couldn't wait to, I got over the fact that, the writing style and things like that, and I just kind of wanted to know what would happen next. And tonight, we just have Barefoot again, because I actually just came back from hanging out with some friends of mine. So we had like Blue Moon and stuff. So I guess maybe Blue Moon is our other drink of the night. But we can always go with Barefoot red wine. So for now, cheers, good night. If you want to leave a comment about Curiosity or any other Mars-related thing, or if you thought the movie was overrated or underrated. That was the other thing I wanted to talk about. The movie, John Carter, very quickly. It was actually supposed to be the first animated movie ever. Now, the first animated movie, if you don't remember, is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs by Disney. But Disney actually played around with the thought of having Princess of Mars as the first animated movie. That didn't fly too well. But, and then it went into what we like to call developmental hell, which pretty much means the movie just sits there as people just kind of forget about it and just think from time to time what they're going to do with it. And it's been there for 70 years. for 70 years, people were thinking about what to do with the movie A Princess of Mars until finally earlier this year, they made it into John Carter. So yeah, that's your interesting fact.